Hey everyone, welcome to Value First, the product-led sales podcast, a show where I interview sales and growth leaders who share their secrets on how to grow revenue at SaaS companies. Today, my guest is James Labastida. He's the Chief of Staff Revenue at ClickUp, the one app to replace them all, where you can manage tasks, docs, chat, goals, and more. Before ClickUp, James was the VP Revenue at GoSite. James, thanks for taking the time. How are you?
Doing great. It's 5 a.m. here in California, but I love it.
5 a.m. Shout out to you for doing a podcast this early. It's 8 a.m. for me. That's amazing. Let's just start by explaining for people who don't know what ClickUp is and what the hell does a chief of staff revenue do at a big company like that? I don't think everyone knows.
Yeah, no, great questions for sure. ClickUp is an all-in-one platform. We specialize in workflow automation, documentation, integrations, and especially right now, like our docs and notes app, it's really, really strong. So what we aim to do is actually create workforce productivity OS. So the way you want to think about Salesforce OS for sales, ClickUp is definitely doing that for the future of work.
Amazing.
And chief of staff for revenue, yeah. I definitely get that quite a bit. COS is definitely one of those more ambiguous but popular and rising titles. What that essentially means is that instead of owning one or two or three objectives as a singular player, I'm focused more on the overall objectives of the entire revenue org. So whether it's actually building out a financially disciplined analytics team or a growth engineering team, or even implementing systems that scale like CDP. I oversee a lot of our special projects. So everything from talent acquisition to systems implementation to even experimentation. So kind of fun, definitely well suited for entrepreneurs and those who like to have breadth and depth.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think it's super interesting because I thought chief of staff was mainly employees and hiring and building the team. But when we talked last week, you told me that it's also about implementing the right solutions, implementing the right systems. So I think that's super interesting. Let's start with product-led growth at scale, because I think ClickUp is a great example of a product-led company. You guys have grown like crazy, extremely quickly. And from the start, because I've been following ClickUp for a long time, it was always get started for free, free forever. Now at your scale, what does the funnel look like for your customer acquisition? Is it still really bottom up self-serve?
Yeah, no, great question. ClickUp is intentionally horizontal. We 40% of our user base are tech workers. The rest really ranges, and we are we have scaled globally. So, with that said, like we have a ton of different users. Again, part of COS revenue and kind of my background in data, we really focus on segmenting all our different motions. So definitely for like the self-serve, the smaller like commercial or SMB types of customers, we still very want to honor our PLG motion. But as most companies mature and actually penetrate the mid-market and the enterprise, you do need to start to get a little bit more complex on kind of the more traditional enterprise go-to-market motion, where you're actually like looking at utilizing different methodologies, like maybe champion challenger sales, where you're actually looking to actually get buy-in from multiple stakeholders, whether it's the CIO or maybe you're targeting like a VP of RevOps as your champion. So the not so great answer, it just depends. But
Yeah.
I think that's the value in really driving your decision making with data.
No, that's really great because you guys are merging a very efficient product led motion. You're really strong on marketing too, and we'll get back to your content because it's crazy if you go to ClickUp's website. But you're also merging sales and traditional sales in a way. I want to get deeper on that because you said it gets we integrate more of the complex sales workflows into our processes. when do sales get involved, and how at ClickUp?
Yeah, so part of product-led growth is really identifying and defining PQLs, and PQLs are essentially product qualified leads. Um, what you want to think about like a PQL is like any set of actions or behaviors that indicate, hey, a user or a set of users have demonstrated X, Y, and Z that makes them actually really excited to join to buy the product, or maybe they want to learn more. So um, in the past, a lot of companies have employed inbound, and I definitely love inbound. Huge believer in HubSpot's kind of revolutionary approach to go to market with
Yeah.
PQLs. Because we are intentionally horizontal, we add over 10,000 users a day. We actually work really closely with our data science and machine learning teams to actually create our own proprietary model for all the different industries and segments to really help assist our sales team in saying like, hey, like off of these certain firmographic data points, this user or this account looks like they're ready to actually be handheld and move into more of a traditional motion.
Yeah. Wow. 10,000 signups a day. That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Can you give like a concrete example? I don't know if you can, but of what a PQL would look like at ClickUp. I'm guessing it's a mix of firmographics and key product actions.
Yeah, exactly. So the firmographics help us like lead route and segment and prioritize what kind of leads go to what teams. A set of actions with PQLs could definitely be, hey, say a user signs up on day one, they might invite two or three or four other of their employees. They'll create a few spaces, they'll create a few tasks, and then those tasks will be complete, and maybe a few other users will comment and review and leave feedback on that. I think that's where really ClickUp separates itself from a lot of players in the space. We really value this concept of like the multiplayer mode versus single
Yeah.
player, where again,
Yeah.
this is true collaboration. You can the commenting features, the collaboration features, it's super great. I think it really kind of gets deeper into the personas. So for me, at this kind of point of um, my objectives in terms of building, I'm not necessarily always project managing. I'm not necessarily writing extensive requirements, but a lot of times on a responsibility matrix, I do have to review, I do have to comment. And so it makes it really simple for me to just even log into like our mobile app, review something, comment on it, like give like an emoji reaction to indicate that I've seen this, and just leave feedback. So I think
Yeah.
that could be a pretty good example of, hey, like within 2 or 3 days, we got 5 people involved. We completed a few tasks, and then you can definitely see that it's very easy to leave feedback. So, in that sense, if that account had maybe 100 employees, that would trigger something to our sales team or our SDR BDR team to see if there's like any more indication for I guess expansion.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's great. And I think you guys are a great example of building a very efficient land and expand strategy and a really, really short time to value. You can get to value extremely quickly and click up. And I think that's one subject that I want to dive deeper on, because a lot of people think PLG is about having a viral, externally viral product. Like Calendly, you experience Calendly, you see the product, you sign up, and there's an external viral loop. But I think you guys are a great example of a land and expand viral loop. So internally, similar to Slack. And also, I think driving a lot of content to support a bit less virality in the product. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we are so extensible and robust. Truthfully, like I know for a lot of people, just entering into ClickUp can be a little bit of an overwhelming experience. So you hit it right on the head. Like we really support our user base with a ton of content, and we talk a lot about like product-led growth. ClickUp, like when we were scaling, it's not like we were thinking like, hey, let's be product-led or anything. It was just kind of very intuitive towards the founding team's core principles and values. And so a lot of it is actually like community-led growth. So um, early on, and until very recently, Zeb, the founder, would read every single request through a system that we call Canny, and we get all these user requests, and we'd prioritize that in the roadmap. And I think from those requests, obviously we would release features, but we would release content to really make sure that, hey, our users know how to use this product. We want to be as customer centric as possible, and I think it's just kind of the right thing to do when you have a
Yeah.
core value of customer obsession. So, and
Yeah,
then
and
we
I think
really invest into support. A lot of people won't invest into like support; they'll look at it as a cost center. We definitely look at it as something to add to our brand and really helps us expand our brand and product value.
yeah, no, absolutely. I think ClickUp is a great example of not wanting to force product-led growth or to force community-led growth onto your business, but really starting from time to value and the value that we want to deliver to our users, and then building the core functions around it to make it work, whether it's external virality, internal virality, like you guys have a land and expand strategy or a content strategy to support your community. And if you don't believe us when we say ClickUp has a ton of freaking content, go to their footer and check all of what they have in the footer in their blog. It's crazy. So that's interesting. Going back to you mentioned an example of Pqls for you guys, and that when accounts have certain criteria, whether it's firmographic or key product actions or users that are invited, there's notification to sales and sales get involved. How do sales get involved? Is it enter into a campaign or try to have more of a high touch? Can you give listeners an example of how a sales an AE or BDR would start interacting with a qualified account?
Yeah, it's very, again, it's I think a lot of the work we do is definitely during that activation and onboarding stage for the user or customer. So from there, it definitely follows more of a traditional approach where SDR or BDR will go ahead and reach out to the account and just kind of get get a good understanding on the needs and criteria and really who these users are. From there, it follows a pretty traditional motion: set up a demo, identify key pain points, really solution based selling.
Yeah.
For the more complex or larger deals, I think we definitely are starting to employ a more of a enterprise ready go to market motion where we're incorporating solutions engineering and professional services to really get buy-in from the multiple stakeholders for those accounts.
Yeah, and I think that's underrated by a lot of people. If you look at Slack's revenue reports from last year, I think 40% of their revenue was from AEs expanding, converting high value accounts, and really upselling. So I think that's really underrated, and it can even be put in place by smaller companies. You don't need to have the size of ClickUp to do it. One thing that I want to make sure that we spend time on today is building the team for the product led growth motion, because that's your chief of staff. That's part of what you do, is recruit the best people, put the best processes in place. And I think a lot of companies out there are struggling either to get buy-in for product led growth or to how to build that team to start, how to start that motion. So one thing that I wanted to ask you is, let's say I'm a SMB B2B SaaS and I want to start, I'm sales led right now and I want to start my product led motion. Who do I who do I hire and what do I look for?
I think before you hire, you definitely need to get buy-in from your leadership and executive team and really defining like what is product led and what does that mean. And it can really mean anything. The best product led leaders I've seen have this nice little intersection between being pretty technical, whether they're PM or former like engineer or have some background in engineering, uh, go to market or some kind of distribution strategy, and really understanding unit economics. At the end of the day, like a lot of these PLG strategies or inbound strategies are very much innovated based on how our users are changing their buying behavior and really improving unit economics. So I
Yeah.
think it's really important to define what that looks like. Um, and yeah, I mean, there it's definitely hard to find. those individuals, but I think if you go back like 8 or 9 years ago, they would be like the traditional like growth hackers. So I'd look at anyone who's like very quantitatively based, who kind of understands demand gen or marketing, and really enjoys kind of that startup to scale up phase, that 0 to 500 employees. They've got to be really good at experimentation. They've really got to be good at understanding that this is a holistic growth loop. It is a combination of how your teams are interacting with the customers and the products, how your product team is working with that feedback, and yeah,
Yeah, that's super
yeah.
interesting. That's super interesting. I think that that there's a need for a bit of flexibility in the employee and product led growth, because it's not necessarily someone that is good at only marketing and needs to have thought about the product and understanding about the product, maybe some development. How do you analyze or find those key traits in people where you're trying to find someone that's a growth hacker, for example, someone who's great in marketing but has a data background and an analytics background, maybe someone in sales that is a previous founder that really understands the pain point of users. How would you go? I get the like what you're looking for. If we dive a little bit deeper, like how would you go about finding those people and finding those traits when you're looking for new candidates?
Yeah, I definitely brought up the 0 to 500 because I think stage awareness is always important when you're looking at the leaders. And typically I bring up 0 to 500 because it's typically the leaders who play in like that pre-C to Series B type of stages. And you'll find that they're like people who really love like bootstrap to Series B. And with that, there's just inherently a little bit of lack of product maturity. So no matter
Hmm.
how much you try on like getting the best go to market motion, getting the best go to market teams, getting the best marketing or demand gen teams, when there's immaturity in your product, those kind of growth oriented people have to really understand the value of product. Like it
Yeah,
doesn't matter, like they could acquire 1,000 customers a month and decrease their CAC, but you'll see that their LTV and their churn just isn't where it needs to be. So,
I agree.
um, but definitely looking at those three characteristics, I think it's important that it's not just one singular leader. Hopefully, you can get a leader who like understands or has experience in those very specific skill sets. But it's important if they don't to ask what kind of team would you need right away to be very successful. Like I really understand what I need when building out growth teams pretty quickly, and I try to get anyone I'm talking to really be bought in on what that means before I even like consider moving forward in any like process of joining a new team.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think I told you that in a past chat, but in the sales acceleration formula by Mark Roberts, the ex-CMO of HubSpot, he mentions that founders are really great hires for growth in sales. Founders that have companies that didn't work, because it's people that really step into the shoes of their users, have empathy, and really understand the pain point and can get behind the user's perspective. So I think that's one of the important point that you just mentioned when looking for someone in a growth team. Now, I think a lot of leaders in SaaS are trying to figure out who should own what in relations to product like growth. And so I'm curious to get your thoughts on that. For a big company, I'm guessing you guys have a department for growth, and growth is its own function. But do you merge like sales and marketing and product people into an independent growth team? Do you have growth people in all departments? Like I think a lot of people have a question mark there about like how do I structure my growth team internally and who owns what?
Yeah, like I said, it really goes back to the very beginning. If you can really define like what is product led and why you want it, I really truly believe that it should be its own separate function, and its objectives and key metrics are very different than sales and marketing and product. Um, so right now, yeah, I do see some teams, especially if they don't have a growth leader, and it is a rising you term per se. They might have growth marketers in marketing, and they might have product growth in product. I think, especially as you scale, there are so many different objectives. For us, again, we have so many different segments that we want to capture. The LTV for one vertical can be significantly different than the LTV for another. It might cost more to acquire those type of customers, but the LTV might be like 2x better in performance. So I do think the best ways to build a growth team is just to have it separately. Y Combinator released an article a few years back saying like, I think there's a subset that report into engineering, and a sub like maybe like 40% that report into like the CEO, and maybe 10% report into the others. So there's good content. And OpenView released an article recently kind of making the claims for growth to be its own independent organization.
Okay, got it, got it. But I find it interesting in the way you're answering. It really shows why ClickUp is a leader, because most of your answers are framed around what you're trying to do and what you're trying to generate as value, not necessarily fitting with what people do out there. So I think it's super interesting, because your first answer is like, well, go back to what you're trying to do, go back to the core thing that you're trying to solve, or to bring us value, rather than just, oh, like everyone else is doing this, we're going to do it this way. So I think it shows in the culture of ClickUp that you guys really lead the space and really think about the right things. One thing that I want to talk about, because we've explored what you look for in candidates when you're trying to build that revenue team at a product like company. The other part of what you do is finding solutions. Now, in product like growth, there's a lot of emphasis on data, on analytics, on the back end of things.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but the best product led businesses are also, and ClickUp is a great example, crazy about UI UX. So I'm curious, just quickly get your thoughts on how do you evaluate a solution with your team, and what are you looking for when you want to implement a new solution in your revenue team?
A new solution in terms of like new technology.
Yeah, new technology that you guys want to use internally.
Oh yeah. Again, for us, we add 10,000 users a day. For us, like growth is really measured week over week. So um, at least in terms of how we look at it, our growth team was recently started earlier this year when I joined, and we were super fortunate. Like everyone has an engineering and data engineering background.
That's
I had a
practical.
RevOps, yeah, like I had a RevOps background, so I kind of understood like cross functionally what all the business use cases were. So I think really from the get go, we try to do a very extensive stakeholder analysis to really see what are their requirements, how would this solution really benefit them, what are their pain points, and then so that's just getting buy-in within the business. From an actual technical evaluation side, we do look holistically within our entire growth and product growth infra stack, and just see like, hey, does this work well with the rest of what we're trying to do? How quickly can we implement this? Does it scale? I think I've worked in very early stage companies. I've always loved to kind of um, kind of take a gamble or do like a joint venture with like a newer upcoming technology and team. I'm very entrepreneurial. Those are some considerations that just might not be appropriate for the stage that we're at. So we definitely look
Yeah.
at, hey, like has for what we need to do right now, does this technology and does this company have that proven expertise at scale? But I really like technologies and solutions that are extremely agile. That I kind of do a deep dive in the actual like technologies that they use. Is do the way they work, is it in alignment to the way we work? Uh, Zeb was an engineer. We're very much like, we're very big in terms of like building our own internal tools. That's what I led at my last company. So how quickly can they release new features depending on what we need to do? So
Yeah, that's super insightful. And one thing that you've said that I think is really important that early stage SaaS need to consider. So people listening, working with a company like ClickUp is and a big SaaS, like it can be hard. It can be really demanding, and in it's flashy. Like it's amazing to say like, hey, I have ClickUp or I have Miro or I have Loom as a client. But remember, if you're starting out, it can be really draining to work because there's a lot of you have 10,000 signups a day. So if I deliver a solution to you, it better freaking work and scale it really fast. So I think it's one thing to consider that it's sexy to go after those flagship like leading SaaS, but it can be also a lot of work that maybe a small team cannot handle. So I think that's a really insightful thing that you just mentioned. All right, I think it's time to wrap up. You're a very busy person. I think you need to go and have breakfast because it's 5:30 in the morning for you right now. I'm gonna hop on the bandwagon of podcasts, and before I leave you alone for today, ask you 4 quick fire questions. You ready?
Yep.
Let's do it. Why? What have I not asked you that you think I should ask?
If you can do anything outside of software, what would you do?
If you could do anything outside of software, what would you do?
I'd probably enjoy like just creating like small stories, like photography and just content. So
Cool.
yeah,
Amazing. Well, look out for James content next couple years. We'll see if he puts anything out. Second question, which CEO or founding team do you look up to and why?
you already stole my thunder. Mark Roberge and the entire HubSpot team. I
Agreed.
was sales acceleration like guru. My last company was super fortunate enough to partner with Stage Two, where Mark's one of the partners there. So I got experience to definitely be like trained and mentored by that entire group of HubSpot execs. I think again, like I'm very big into innovation, and what they did for inbound and PLG and really redefining growth was incredible. So
Yeah, agree 100%. What's the most underrated tool, growth technique, or skill for sales in your opinion?
working with support and product.
Good one. Good one. It's the first time I hear it. Good one. Why?
I mean, the reality is it's easy to acquire, but to actually like make sure that your customers love you, and if they don't love you, how do you actually provide that resolution to not only address those challenges, but to make them evangelists and enthusiasts? Like, oh wow, like not only did they solve this problem, but they also like really helped me out. So I think that's the idea with growth. It's not like revenue, where revenue is a very lagging indicator of a set of actions or behaviors.
Yeah.
Growth is really just hopefully it results in like better unit economics, but growth is like a full growth loop, right? From your go to market motion to your customer experience to your product experience.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're trying to be a killer product led company, focus on net dollar retention. Acquisition is not the long term way to do it and to grow like crazy. So that's a good one. Something you wish you knew when you were 20.
Don't sweat the small stuff.
Don't what?
Don't sweat the small stuff.
Nice. Got it. Amazing. Well, amazing, James. I think it was a really insightful chat. People are going to get a lot from it. I'm sure it's rare that we talk to a staff and product solution leader in a product led company like ClickUp. So that's super amazing. If people want to learn more about ClickUp, they can go to clickup.com. And what's the best way to reach you?
For better or worse, James at clickup.com. Super easy. But you should definitely follow Zeb. Amazing content, amazing visionary leader for sure. His content's
Amazing.
like super
Amazing.
just entertaining.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. I'll put the links in the description. All right, James, thanks for taking the time and have a good one. Talk soon.
All right, you too. Thanks,
See ya.
Fred.